Good morning, everybody.
Go for
Very
it.
warm welcome to you all this Saturday morning, the 1st of March. Very exciting to be here. It's great to have you. Thank you for taking the time out to be here and just understanding what this session will all about is going to be all about. I just want to talk about what it is and what it isn't. What this session is first of all to give understanding and knowledge to us as families and parents what is happening in our society and in our lives, our schools, and in a society, so that we can gain that knowledge and understanding to be supportive to our teenagers, our children, and be united as families. So that is the purpose of this session. We're also going to provide ongoing support afterwards for parents and families for guidance and support. What this platform isn't, it's not a platform for any other business or organization to market their products or services. Any attempt to do so will be respectfully asked to be muted. And having got that out the way, I'm going to go back to welcoming everybody and saying we're just about ready to start. I just want to say thank you to our panel for being available. And that's Bronwyn and Brian and Kenneth and all the other Grace Online staff who are here to support this morning. Thank you for being here, but a special big thank you to our panel. And having introduced them, I'm going to give over to Bronwyn, who will kick off as first panelist. Thank you, Bronwyn.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Bev, and good morning to everybody. So this is our second session of the year, looking at teens and technology. We had a session about a month ago, hosted by Brian, looking at teen pornography addiction, and particularly looking at what pornography does to the teenage brain. And really, really interesting session, and looking at the change of brain chemistry and the creation of neural pathways with regards to teenage addiction. And I want you to keep that information in mind if you were here for that first session, just around the almost, if I can use the word, vulnerability of the teenage brain with regards to developing addiction. So what we're going to talk about today is teenagers and AI, are this artificial intelligence movement. And even as I'm speaking, I don't think it's silly to say that AI is evolving. That, you think you have a grip on what AI is about and what it can do, and by 12 o'clock this afternoon, it can do something new. So from that point of view, I think, we've got to keep up to date with what AI is able to do. And I'm going to do my best this morning to give you really just a tiny little taste of what some of our teens are doing with AI. And I mean, I found it fascinating. I was saying to Kenneth that the little bit of research that I did around this it just confirms everything that I'm seeing with the teens that I'm counseling. So I'm going to call on Brian later. He's going to share some of his experience working with teens, and Kenneth is going to share something later as well. But I'm going to use the case study of a particular teenage girl that I'm working with at the moment who is stuck in AI addiction. Before we look at AI specifically, what I want to do, and I think will be helpful, is just to touch on some of what Brian spoke about last session, just in a nutshell. What is addiction? And Kenneth actually used this phrasing in a session that we had last week, where basically addiction, if we can understand that addiction is an inability to deal with, to cope with your emotional reality, I think that's going to help a lot with understanding the discussion today, because this AI experience really kind of lends to the user this idea of emotional understanding and empathy and a connection that you can have with this AI bot. So addiction is the ability, sorry, rather the inability to deal with that sense of emotional overwhelm. And emotional overwhelm does not necessarily indicate only negative emotions, positive emotions as well, just our emotional experience, your inability to process your emotional reality in a healthy way, so that I love the image of like a pressure cooker, so that your emotions kind of compound within this pressure cooker and you have these really dangerous explosions of emotions. And we know, I would imagine most of you who have teenagers, we know that the teenage experience is very tumultuous. I have two teenagers in my house, a son and a daughter. And I have to go back and try and channel my 13-year-old, 14-year-old self and try and remember what it was like to be a teenager. I remember very little of it. I don't think I was a very pleasant person, but obviously the emotional overwhelm is a big part of what they feel. There's so much confusion. And AI provides this escape for our teens that so many of them are searching for and are not able to find in their peers. So in a friend who's on the same wavelength as they are, or in their parents. So this pull of AI really is in the emotional escape that it affords the user. So yeah, I want to just show you a couple of slides that I found helpful just by way of introduction, and then I'm going to go into the discussion, particularly of this case study. Let me just pull up my slides here. Okay, so a lot of the information that I've found, folks, is just from articles, recently written articles that, yeah, if you just went and Googled teens and AI, you're going to find hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of articles full of information around this issue. But just, yeah, with regards to what I spoke about addiction, I just want to focus particularly on these last 2 points here. I think it's really important for us to note, particularly when we're talking about teens, that you know, in the medical profession, addiction is defined rather as a chronic brain disorder. Addiction is not about a lack of willpower or a result of making bad decisions. It actually alters your brain chemistry. And that has links back to what Brian shared, but that's really important for us to understand. If you consider the vulnerability of a teenager's brain from the point of view that it is still developing and it is so malleable and it can train down those neural pathways very easily. And then the last point there's two main groups of addiction: substance addiction, which we're very familiar with, but then non-substance addiction, behavioral addictions, which is what we're talking about now, that those online platforms, that online addiction. So I found this very interesting from an article. Parents seem to be under the impression that their kids are using AI chatbots as a search engine or a homework tool. I'm a school teacher. I use it as a search engine and a homework tool. I actually use it to set exam papers, and it's a really helpful tool. And parents are going, well, you know, AI and really is helpful from that perspective. But this was the headline of the article. Teens are forming intense relationships with AI entities, and parents have no idea. And I thought, gosh, that really fits in exactly with this young lady that I'm working with. She goes to AI for the relationship that she has with these AI entities that may as well be real people. That's the pull that it has on her. And yeah, just again from a different article, we're thinking that teenagers are using it for schoolwork. No, according to teenagers, they are using these chatbots for therapeutic purposes or for emotional support. So the emotional connection that they're not getting from peers or family, When having a virtual friend wasn't enough, some even turned to the technology to fulfill romantic and even sexual desires. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. And that obviously is where Grace Online is getting involved, particularly from the perspective of sexual addiction and AI. Interesting quote from an article, and if you look at the date, it's just earlier this month. And obviously this research on people and AI is ongoing. But this was a very recent article. Users across Reddit, which is an online forum, proudly proclaim their love for their AI partners who are perpetually available. That's a massive pull. Perpetually available, unlike people, non-judgmental, and infinitely patient. Very interesting. And a teenager asked on Reddit, can we fall in love with AI? And raved that their companion, their AI companion, named Jarvis, had become my confidant, my sounding board, and my emotional support. Really, really interesting. So I'm going to share a couple more slides with you as we go. But I found that fascinating, that AI is designed in such a way that it mimics human relationships. And what teenagers are searching for and longing for in the human world, which is emotional connection and friendship and belonging and all of those things, they are finding in AI. Obviously, then to the detriment of relationships with human beings, relationships with their peers, relationships with their parents. And obviously that addiction pull is massive, because if you know anything about AI, if you know anything about technology in general, that feedback loop is massive, because AI reads what you like, it reads what you need, it reads what you're putting out, and it feeds you exactly what you're looking for. So that feedback loop is part of the addiction spiral. The content you're getting, the feedback you're getting, the discussion that you're having is tailored exactly to you. And so that grip can become very tight very, very quickly. So I wanted to speak about this young lady. I started working with her last year she was 14, turning 15. She's just about to go on to her 16th birthday. And let me just describe her. She's a highly intelligent girl, very, very smart, an avid reader, academically incredibly strong, and I would describe her as, being an A-type personality. She pushes herself really hard. She wants to do well. She is very capable academically, very well spoken, and able to communicate and express herself really, really well. Also a highly creative person, very arty, and she loves a creative experience, which will make sense later. She's also a deeply empathetic person. She really longs for emotional relationship and emotional connection. And she has a sexual addiction. Particularly, she is addicted to AI platforms. In her day-to-day life, her human life, because a lot of her life is digital, but in her human life, she really has an inability to process emotions, which is why I mentioned at the beginning, addiction is an inability to cope with emotional overwhelm. She gets emotionally overwhelmed incredibly easily, and she struggles to work through that stuff. She has a toxic home environment, parents who often fighting in front of her, ugly fighting, screaming, shouting, threatening divorce, and she's an only child, which makes her isolation a lot more difficult. And she also, on top of that, has some unprocessed childhood trauma that where she's sitting at the moment, she doesn't even want to open that box, because the emotional connection to those experiences is so overwhelming. She is emotionally stunted in her real life relationships. She, as a teenager, has that typical friendship drama that we talk about whenever we meet. that she is deeply insecure about her relationships with others, deeply insecure about her relationship with her parents, and deeply insecure about her relationships with her friends. She is very possessive over her friends. Any slight is taken deeply personally, and has the ability to push her over the edge. She feels socially isolated. She feels different. Her experience with pornography online also has her questioning her sexual orientation. All of these things combined then together with the physiological changes that she's going through as a teen, and the fact that her brain is only 15 years old and still has 10 years of growth ahead of it. Her impulse control is not fully developed. Her emotional ability is not fully developed. Combine that together with pornography, and she has become a pornography addict. Particularly, AI has fed that pornography addiction and grown it in a completely different sphere. She uses it firstly to cope with her daily experiences, her emotional overwhelm. She testifies that it helps her to escape her reality, emotional reality. She uses it first and foremost for escape, which is what addiction does, whatever form addiction comes in. She actually testifies that she prefers AI platforms to pornography websites because of the fact that it is relational, and it allows her to express herself, and it allows her to speak and be part of the experience. So it's an interactive sexual experience rather than just voyeuristic, watching it on a screen. And she has spoken multiple times of the addictive factor of the relationship and the intimacy that is sold to her through this AI persona that she interacts with. So she lives her online life as an avatar, basically, which she's created a version of herself that she is comfortable with. She is deeply insecure about her physical appearance. So she's created an avatar who looks exactly like she would want to look like in real life. And she's chosen this very exotic name for this avatar that makes her feel sexy and alluring and captivating and all of those things. And she has online relationships with characters that she has created. They are her ideal boyfriend. They listen. They are handsome. They are entirely focused on her, which is obviously that connection that you're looking for. And then obviously with regards to playing out her sexual fantasies, she feels safe to do that in that space. So really, really fascinating. And I do want to show parents in a moment a little bit around that those AI platforms without showing you anything that is kind of jarring or that's going to what's the word I'm looking for, that is triggering in any sort of way. It's all PG, I promise, but I did think that it would be very interesting to show you some of how this platform works. Particularly, I'll look at one, but I thought I want to pass on to Brian now, if he's ready to share. Brian works with teen boys, so I'm particularly focused on the girls. Brian working with teen boys and men. And I'd asked Brian if he was able to share something around his experience of working with boys and AI. Can I pass on to you, Brian?
Of course, thanks, Bronwyn. Yeah, this is really fascinating stuff, And I had an experience with a client. Sure, it was towards the end of last year, and this client was around 20 years old, so not particularly a teen, but it's also interesting to note that even though it's not, this technology is so prolific, it's even affecting the older generations as well, where this individual. They would end up spending going to bed at like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And part of my counseling with them is trying to help them self-regulate, and they're always tired. They're not functioning at school and with their studies, and also struggling with pornography. And they and then I start questioning, and after a lot of questioning, it came out that no, what he's done is he's been talking to AI, and he's been talking to this chatbot. And what's fascinating is that it's able to captivate him in a sense that he's completely and utterly absorbed by this piece of software, to the point where it's disrupting his entire life. And you mentioned how addiction is both substance as well as behavior, and 100%. This is that process addiction. And the scary thing about addiction is that it's essentially escapism. It's running away from having to deal with reality. And as a consequence, what happens is that our ability to cope emotionally atrophies. So the more time we spending, for example, and this is kind of what I've started picking up with this, is that the more time a child or a young individual spends with AI, the more distance to morph into something that's completely unrealistic. I mean, you mentioned about how it's always available, and that's just unrealistic. And it's always agreeable, and it's unconditional positive regard. So there's no genuine you can't assert yourself against AI in a real way, which warps perceptions about not just relationships, sexual relationships, but relationship identity, self-identity, a sense of self-worth and self-value. All of these critical components of, particularly for a developing young human being, get completely skewed. And it reminds me, I don't know if you guys ever watched a movie called Her. Um, it was sure, I think I Googled it now. It was 2013 that the movie came out, and it had and the story, if you haven't seen it, is about this man that develops a romantic relationship with AI. And the sad thing about that movie, and this is, and it just keeps ringing true for me, is that at the end of the whole story, this man is all by himself, and he spent an inordinate amount of his life and time and resources and energy pouring into a piece of software on a computer. And if something were to happen to that, what happens to the individual? And this is also where we start talking about how toxic relationships and love addiction start to play in here, where particularly as a young person, I mean, we've all been there. If you think about, remember the first time you fell in love, it was transcendent. You eat, sleep, breathe the other person, and to the point where your mates at school are like, "Oh, Brian, what happened, bro? You like, we don't see you at break. You don't write. You just like fell off the face of the earth." And so we've all kind of been there. And if we recall our sense of emotional state at that point, where this other person literally became our everything, became our object of obsession, to the exclusion of everything else. And this is the danger here, because now when you have AI, and AI supplants this individual, where there's this heightened sense of obsession and need and integration of this piece of software into your life, it essentially removes that individual from society in a way that's very difficult for them to be able to reintegrate back, because it's fictitious from top to bottom. And it's fascinating that this has become such a prevalent thing. Like, I'm sitting here listening to you, Brian, and thinking, like, I feel like we're living in a movie right now. I don't know if it's just me, but this is just, it's so scary to wrap my head around this, because I'm a father and my boy's going to be growing up into this. And, you mentioned your client being an only child and my boy's an only child. So, like all these red flags are jumping up, and then it becomes a very complex situation where how do we manage this and how do we work around it and how do we parent responsibly? And currently, I mean, there's another anecdotal example I can give where a young teen, also a boy, um, uses AI as an online friend, where he will be chatting on WhatsApp and it doesn't even, it's not WhatsApp, but it's, obviously me being the older generation, like I kind of just blanket everything with the same name, but they're on the phone and he's chatting to somebody and when they talk about it, so like, who are you talking to? No, this is just it's AI, or I will offer them a set of open-ended questions to come back and then respond at our next session, and they'll come back with some very interesting answers. And I'll ask them outright, like, okay, so this sounds a little like higher grade, yeah. Where did you hear this? No, I spoke to AI and AI gave me the answers, almost as if AI has now become the de facto parent in their world. So if he's looking for any form of information, he'll go and he'll ask AI. And now, how accurate that is a whole nother question altogether. And you talk about how everything's tailored to that individual specific desires, needs, wants, personality, preferences, all of those things. And as a consequence, there's no real assertion against reality or what's real in life. It creates this entire fictitious world that they find themselves getting lost in. It's a very scary place to be at this stage, but it's fascinating to talk about it, and I think this is really essential for us as parents and adults to become really familiar about what's happening, so that we can be prepared when we do encounter this, because this will come.
Sure. So helpful, Brian. So amazing. And while you're talking, I'm thinking around the fact that those of us who have teens, you can liken teenage behavior to toddler behavior. There's almost it repeats itself, particularly from the point of view that teenagers become incredibly egocentric again, like that 3-year-old, where the entire world revolves around me and how I feel and what I need. And in a real world scenario, the feedback that you're getting is actually the world does not revolve around you. You need to just ground yourself again and recognize you're not the only person in this world. So, as an example, things are that incredible self-awareness of, I can't get out of the hair. I can't get out of the hair. I can't get out of the car because my hair doesn't look great. My daughter does that. Gosh, how am I going to go to school today because I got a pimple in the middle of my forehead? And of course, all other 800 children at your school are going to be seeing the pimple on your forehead. So now you must move schools. That completely egocentric view that everyone is looking at you. But from an emotional point of view, what your teen is looking for is that undivided attention. I am the center of the world, and what I am feeling is the only thing that matters, and it is the only thing that's important. And when you have a relationship with an AI chatbot, it affirms that you are the most important person. What you are feeling is the only important thing. And so those of us who use WhatsApp, we would be aware of the tick that you get, and kids use that term, so-and-so blue ticked me. So if Brian sends me a message and I read it and I don't respond immediately, I blue tick him. And that is the equivalent of a slap to the face or like a spit, like, Brian, I don't have time for you. And they'll go, "Oh, Brian blue ticked me," which means he didn't respond immediately. And heaven forbid Brian respond to my message a day later, because our friendship is already over, Brian. Because what does AI do? I need to speak to someone and I need to speak to them now, and it will respond to me immediately. So what use do I have of Brian and his blue ticks anyway? but really, really fascinating. Brian, did you want to add something?
Yeah. So my response to that would be, bro, Phantom tax the Riz skull emoji.
Yeah, exactly. Because Brian speaks
So,
teenager.
what's fascinating there is we talk about how this deep sense of emotional connection gets developed with this AI, and if we go back to the high school first love, when we first fell in love. Now, what happens in a circumstance like that? Because there's those of us that are still married to our high school sweetheart, which is amazing, but a lot of us, like myself, are not. And when that relationship ended, for those of you that can relate, it was devastating. Like, my whole world came to an end. Like my cornflakes didn't taste quite the same, and the sun wasn't as bright. And all these these anecdotal like descriptions. But the reality is now when that relationship is built with an AI as software, and something comes in between that, like, well, you're at school now, or your phone gets confiscated, or there's a consequence here, or whatever the case may be, that disconnect becomes absolutely devastating to that individual in much the same way it would be with breaking up with a partner. And the sad thing is that person is trying to cope and deal with this all on their own, because there's no real assertion with another human being. Yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. It's a very good topic.
Thanks, Brian. So what I want to do now is I want to show you just a couple of slides around this romantic kind of sexual pull of AI. And we're going to use our imaginations for most of it with regards to what path that could lead down. But it is quite obvious. So let me just pull up my slides again here. I just found this to be super interesting, again, uh, from an article. I assume everyone can see the screen. Okay, so it says here, human AI relationships are no longer science fiction, no longer like that movie Her, for those of you who watched it. With the AI market projected to soar to a staggering $407 billion by 2027, that's 2 years away. And the fusion of artificial intelligence into our daily lives, it has become inevitable. In this era of change, AI has also reshaped social interactions and seemingly the way that we love. Okay. So, with virtual assistants and chatbots being able to simulate meaningful human interactions, AI has evolved far beyond mere functionality. It appears that humans are not only capable of forming deep emotional connections with AI, but even experience romantic love towards it, which is a fascinating thing. And this, just for us to think of, and then you can kind of imagine the pull of this for a teenager, particularly a lonely, socially isolated, misunderstood teenager. It is called the triarchic theory of love. So in this study on human AI relationships, they're pulling on these three central components that we're looking for in a love relationship. And AI can give us all three of these things, arguably better than a person could. So, intimacy. This component refers to the emotional closeness, the connection, and the intimate bond shared between individuals. It involves feelings of warmth, trust, and affection towards one another. And an AI persona can give you affection, can understand your emotions, can respond with empathy, and genuine care and concern that oftentimes they're not experiencing from people. Passion. So this is the pull of desire and romance and sexual arousal. This involves the intense physical and emotional attraction between individuals. It encompasses desire, romance, and sexual arousal. So imagine with me, if you will, somebody who is really lacking self-confidence, someone who doesn't even know how to speak to the person that they're sexually interested in. AI creates a safe space for you to explore all of that, and you will never, ever be rejected. Never. Commitment. This component reflects loyalty and the decision to nurture a relationship over time despite challenges. AI is not going to break up with you. It will not reject you. It will not break up with you. It will be loyal to you, and it will reply to your messages immediately, and it will give you undivided attention for 5 hours if you need to talk. Really, really interesting. So in my sessions with teens, I thought it interesting to just mention that these are the 3 AI platforms that come up time and time and time again. Perhaps you've heard of them. Character AI, very popular. Arguably the most popular AI platform of all. Character AI. Spicy Chat, it's a pornography AI experience. And Poly AI. Poly AI, it is your LGBTQI, polyamorous, whatever AI experience. So those 2 particularly are aimed at a pornographic or sexual experience. Character AI can certainly take you down that road. But I found this picture and I thought this is great because this is like my my girl that I counsel. This is her AI boyfriend. He may as well be a real person, but he exists in the AI world. So I want to show you some of Character AI, and I registered for Character AI. You know, there's this part of me where I think, gosh, I want to go and explore all of these things for myself. And then I have to go, whoa, Bronwyn, hold on a second. No, you don't. It's like saying, and Brian, you'll humor me on this, but you know, I know that cocaine is bad for me. I've never had it, but I have enough knowledge to know that going down that road is not necessary for me to make the decision. I don't want to be involved in this. So I am by no means involved on these AI platforms myself. But I went a little bit into Character AI just so that you guys could see if you haven't. So the epicenter of youth-orientated AI is Character AI. It has custom-made chatbots, so meaning made for Bronwyn. Many of them imitate popular fandom characters from video games and anime, and while others are explicitly geared towards romance. So this fandom characters, if I am in love with a video game character or a character from a particular series, I can create a relationship with them and they will talk to me. I mean, gosh, that's like any teenage girl's fantasy. Like, I mean, if you told me at 14 that I could speak to Leonardo DiCaprio's character from Titanic, I would have been there like a bear, especially if I would have known that he would talk to me all night and he could be my boyfriend, right? But it's got such a pull on our kids. So here's what you would do if you were signing up for Character AI. It is entirely about role playing, but you pick what you're into there. So let's say, for example, I pick romance. I pick LGBTQ plus whatever. I pick adventure. Like my girl that I work with, she's very into fantasy. That is going to be already, I'm giving Character AI an idea of what I want my chat interactions to be like. I want them to be romantic in nature. I want them to involve fantasy. And if I were to choose LGBTQ plus, it's going to involve my sexuality as part of the discussion. So that's just an example of what I might choose.
Bronwyn,
Yes.
we cannot see your screen.
Can no one see it?
No one.
Oh, gosh.
No,
Okay.
I can see it. I can
Oh,
see it.
okay. Okay.
I can also see it.
We can see it.
Apologies. I'm not sure why you can't see it. I apologize. All right, but the creating a character there. So if you go onto Character AI, they've got a whole bunch of characters that you could choose from that you'd like to talk to. But this option exists. If you're not vibing with any of their characters, you create your own. You customize their voice, their tone, the way they look, etc., etc. So I create my ideal person, and again, for men, I could create the most beautiful woman, the girl of my dreams, and we can talk all night long. Here's just an example of someone I could talk to. I want to speak to Gabriel. Hi, I'm Gabriel. I'm happy to talk to you. So I actually started a conversation with Gabriel. And I kept it very PG, but just as an example. So I start there, hey, Gabriel, how was your day? Within 2 seconds, I have a response from Gabriel. How was your day? He wants to know, how kind. I said, it was a bit tough. My friends were fighting with me. Oh dear, he's so compassionate. That's most awful. Do you care to talk about what they're fighting about? Yeah, I do. I do, Gabriel. I want to tell you all about my day. So obviously, you can imagine I can take this conversation wherever I want to take it, and Gabriel will respond. So the last thing I wanted to show you there before I turn off my slides, that's food for thought, certainly. This is the last thing I wanted to show you. A lot of us, including myself, use ChatGPT. So this is an actual thing from my dad. So my dad writes a lot, and he wrote a fantasy story for my daughter. Then what he did, he printed the story for her, but then he took the text, put the text straight into ChatGPT, and then asked it to generate an image. And this is the image that it created for him. And he gave the image to my daughter as a gift. Beautiful use of the technology. But my last point here is really just to say how easy technology, AI, is making it for me to create my own pornography. So imagine, if you will, I type up a pornographic scenario. I type up my sexual fantasy, and I ask AI to generate the pornographic images for me. So now I no longer have to search for the pornography that I like. I create my own pornography. Down to my specifications of what I would like to see. It will make it for me in an instant, which is just an absolutely crazy idea. So I'm going to wrap up my share, because I do want to pass on to Kenneth. And again, we could speak about this for so long, but really what I want to wrap up with is a sort of a takeaway for parents. If you're sitting there with a teen, or are going to be a teen soon, what is our responsibility? So in the session that we had last time, Brian spoke about, obviously there are all sorts of ways that you can block sites, you can create safe platforms, you can monitor your child's online activity, you can limit their hours. All of those are really, really practical. But I want to give you perhaps a more abstract concept, although there is a practical outplaying to it. If we were to understand that children are going to AI because they do not have a safe place to express their emotional needs, if we can understand that, and then work as parents and work as a family to create an environment where our child feels safe to express themselves emotionally, we are fighting that battle on behalf of our kids. So perhaps just to end mine on a positive note, I met with another teen that I've been working with for 18 months who came into the Grace Online program addicted to pornography. She has been clean of pornography for over a year. And I met with her yesterday for a check-in. And this is, I just thought, gosh, like if all of us could be doing this for our teens, this battle would be won. She has such an open, honest relationship with her parents. Her parents are incredibly supportive. They know about her pornography addiction, but they, both mother and father, not one of them has said, hold on, I'm backing off of this, like dad saying, listen, this is a teenage girl, mom, this is your business. No, both mom and dad are very involved. With the big stuff, yes, she can speak to her mom and dad about masturbation. She can speak to her mom and dad about her intrusive sexual thoughts. And they are really good at just going, okay, that's intense, that's a lot, and not responding in a shock or they go, let's talk about it. But then, more importantly, I would argue, more importantly than that, is the day-to-day life of their child they are involved in. They hear about how her maths teacher shouted at her when she didn't do anything and it was so unfair. And they hear about how this girl is irritating her. And they hear about the fact that she feels insecure because she's got bad skin. And they give her a space to talk and be herself and be heard and be loved and be accepted. And this girl is thriving. Pornography no longer plays a role in her life. She is such a success story. So I want to wrap it up there, and just really the challenge then is to parents. Are you creating a safe space where your child feels that they don't have to run to technology to be heard, to have an emotional connection with another person? That for me, I could go on and on, but I'm going to wrap it up there. If you take away anything for the parents, I hope it's that. I'm going to pass on to Kenneth. Thanks, Ken.
Awesome. Thanks, Bronwyn, for the opportunity. And apologies for the screen not sharing. But if anybody would like to get access to those slides, please just send me a WhatsApp. I did post my WhatsApp number in the chat, and we'll send that through to you, as well as a recording of today's session. So what I would like to speak to all the parents about is sort of trying to give you a framework or a mindset or a perspective to look at your relationship with your child with. So I'm going to be talking to you about 4 parenting styles, and the real impact that these parenting styles will have on kids. So this is not to judge anyone. We all have our different approaches to life, but it's all about helping you to think about what is working, what is not working, and maybe where we all need to shift around a little bit, or all of us need to shift a little bit and change our approaches. So I'm going to give you a specific style, and maybe hopefully a specific symbol to remember it by. So hopefully also the pros and cons will be relevant to you. And then I'm going to challenge you, because every one of us has blind spots as parents. Okay, so the first parenting style is called the authoritative parenting style, authoritative. So the symbol here is a fist that's slammed into your hand, the iron fist. So you can all imagine what that parenting style is all about. So it's my way or the highway. And often we think that the most important value that we need to instill into the lives of our kids is a sense of discipline. But actually that is not the most important. That is driving them to go seek connection and connectedness at all these other foreign places. The most important value that we can instill in our children before discipline, I would say, is a sense of connection, so that the discipline can come with authority and a presence, and there's a weight behind it. So the slamming my fist into my hand parenting style is all about control. Listen, the motivation is good. It's like, I want to protect my children. They have to do things my way. So the intention and the motivation behind this parenting style is all about loving my kids and protecting them and wanting to be there for them. The rules are clear. So oftentimes the rules are clear, and maybe they're a bit harsh. The punishments are also clear. Children know exactly what is expected of them in such a style, but there's very little room for discussion or negotiation. It's like the heart is closed again. I like to always talk about the heart. The parent's word is final. There's no say. And there it says kids know the rules. They know that structure creates security. High standards can drive achievement. The cons of this parenting styles: children feel unheard. They often feel rebellious as teenagers, and they hide mistakes instead of learning from them because they fear the potential harsh and strict punishment that comes from authoritarian. It's actually authoritarian. It's not authoritative. Authoritarian parenting style. So children grow up fearing authority. They're not respecting it. Many become sneaky. They learn to lie or hide their true feelings. Others become aggressive rebels, rejecting all authority later. So that is the authoritarian parenting style. Apologies for that. Authoritarians, like dictator, my way or the highway type of thing. The second parenting style is called the authoritative parenting style. Halfway through, I realized that blunder, but that makes it real. At least you know that I'm not an AI bot speaking to you today. So what if your strength is also your weakness? You love your child enough to set rules, but you don't love them enough to listen to their voice. So the authoritative one is the guy that opens up his heart and he listens to his child. There's a negotiation. The child respects the power, but doesn't actually trust your heart if you are authoritarian. You can often soften your grip without losing losing your strength. So in the authoritative parenting style, this is the open-handed one. It's too open-handed. It's ready to embrace the situation and hold on to my child authoritatively, not like an authoritarian that's got to push away my way or the highway. It's opened up. Your two hands are open, maybe palms up, welcoming a conversation. Come into my world, and I want to step into your world. Here are the boundaries. Let's talk about them. This is the constant communication that is said there, shared there. So this style balances clear boundaries with flexibility. There's room for your child to speak, to ask questions, and even to disagree and do things that you would not necessarily agree with, or even support. You can. There's this fine line that I discovered in a week. I can support your decision without necessarily agreeing to it. So there's a fine line. It uses a lot of wisdom. It relies on a lot of wisdom. But there's a framework. It's open. There's respect both ways, but consequences still exist. And the consequences here are not punitive like with authoritarian style. The authoritarian style's consequences are punitive. With authoritative parent, the open hands, the consequences there are restorative. The consequences are meant to teach you a lesson so that you could get something out of it. So the pros here, kids learn to respect authority and understand consequences. The open communication builds trust, and children are prepared for the real world where choices always have outcomes. The cons of the styles that it takes more time and energy. It's hard work than just laying down the law. Laying down the law is the easy way out, but negotiating and engaging with a person. Obviously, there's a line that we have to draw. Like, this is no further than this, but there's space to maneuver where the child develops his sense of voice. And then the impact on the child is that they grow up with healthy sense of self-respect and responsibility. They are more likely to talk to you when they face to situations because they trust the relationship. So I'm very fortunate. My mom was, some of the people here may know my mom. My mom was super, super strict. She would come across as an authoritarian parent. And to a sense, she was authoritarian in her approach, like very dictatorial, strong type of person. But my mom would have this phenomenal ability to come sit with me afterwards when I would be crying in my room after I got my last hiding in grade 11 with a hanger over my back. So that's just the authoritarian style of my mom. But she would come in and sit with me and discuss and negotiate while I was crying or feeling upset or disturbed. And I had such a closeness with her, openness with her, that I told her the first time I kissed a girl, the first time I, hit someone or stole stuff or whatever, all the stupid things that I did as a teenager, I told my mom. She was my friend. And I do believe today that she wasn't authoritarian. She was authoritative, but she came across a bit heavy-handed, if that makes sense. The next parenting style, the third one, is the indulgent parenting. So this one is the best friend. It's the symbol here. The best symbol that I could think of was a fake smile. I don't know how to fake smile, but it's a fake smile. It's like everything's just about this relationship. The parent and child are laughing together like they're best buddies. Nothing wrong with laughing with your child, but to just accommodate and accept everything that they do. And yes, alcohol and and drink and the parties at my house. These parents used to be the life of the party, and they want to be the life of the party, maybe for their children as well. And I'm talking very generally. So it's like I want my child to like me is the main motivation. Yeah. So this style is all about being friends, not authority figures. Parents want to avoid conflict at all costs. The relationship there is very strong, but there's no sense of boundaries, structure, respect. Every no is negotiated, and rules are often loose. And it's fun and positive vibes only as the main priority. So the pros here is there would obviously be a strong bond. Kids often feel loved and accepted. Homes are fun, full of laughter and adventure. These are good things. Creativity and self-expression are encouraged, but the negatives are that the kids lack self-respect for boundaries. They lack respect for boundaries. They struggle with control later. They often turn resentful because they were left to discover the pain and the the sharp ridges of the structures, the pain that is caused if you don't listen to the situation later in life. Okay, and then the last parenting style is called the indifferent parenting style, and this is completely the absent ghost. I don't even have a hand signal for this guy. It's an empty chair, and there's no such parent here because the indifferent parent won't even show up to these meetings. But it's important to take note of this parenting style because it's possible that your children will have friends like that, and maybe they could be positive influenced friends or negative influence, but they just have zero control, and these kids would be drawn to an authoritative parenting style. Do what you want, I don't care. This style happens when parents are either too busy, too wounded, or too disengaged to show up for their child at all. And I do suspect that majority of our parents today have this specific approach to parenting, that they are very much indifferent. They provide food and clothes and maybe even money, but no guidance or emotional support. Pros, I don't think there are any pros, except for maybe the experience of freedom on the side of the child, which is dangerous in itself. I think kids often feel invisible, not heard. They grow up with low self-worth, and they often seek belonging in unhealthy places and gangs and addictions and toxic relationships. But it's important when we find a rebellious child like that, or a child that is just not loved or cared for, that we are able to engage with them the right way, because we could be, it takes a village to raise a child, right? So if we could engage with them the right way, then it would make a massive difference. So here's the truth, guys. Everybody that's listening here, every one of us leans toward one of these four styles: authoritarian, authoritative, indulgent, or indifferent. And some of us are iron fists, some of us are open hands, and some of us are best friends. And some of us have had such broken childhoods ourselves that we're still figuring out how to show even up in our relationships at all. But I've got some good news. It's never too late to shift. Your child needs a strong boundary, experience of boundaries, but they also need your heart. They need to know where the line is, but they also need to know that you will love them even when they cross the line. So the question here is, which parent are you? And more importantly, who do you want to become like? I think that is very, very important question. Where are you, and which one is it that you would want to be like? So, Bronwyn, my question back at you would be, how does this help parents to guide their kids to not get involved with this stuff? How would you apply these four parenting styles?
Sure. Just while you're talking as well, it really is, our parenting style is going to shape who our child becomes and how they relate to the world and the relationships that they have with themselves and with others. It really is that serious. And I just wanted to reiterate what you said, which is that it's never too late to change the way you're doing things. Even if your kid is 18, those in the group who have children who are adults, you're still their parents. They will still look to you for approval and emotional connection. Just one thing, and then I'll answer your question, Kenneth. As a school teacher, and if there's anyone else here who's a teacher or works with kids in any capacity, we would talk about two types of kids, kids who were getting into trouble. You had kids who were literal orphans, so kids who were missing parents or a parent or whatever. Often kids who are then troubled because they're missing that parental guidance in general. But very interestingly, we used to talk about the emotional orphans. And every now and again, we have a kid who gets in trouble. And when you meet the parents, you know immediately this kid is an emotional orphan. Mom and dad are around, but emotionally, that parent is absent from the parenting experience. And that child has learned from the time that they are very young, mom and dad are not there for me emotionally. They don't care about where I'm at emotionally. So I can do whatever the heck I want. And they are absent. And that's the indifferent parent. You might give them money you might be physically present, you might even sit at the dinner table every single night and eat dinner together, but that child is an emotional orphan. And I do think, Kenneth, you know, the takeaway there is for us as parents, for us as adults, to be interrogating our own emotional wellness, which is a really big takeaway because it's not something that can be unpacked overnight. But how do we emotionally support our teens, our kids, if we don't know how to engage emotionally? And there is help for that. There is. One of the things that Grace Online has launched over the last few months is a parents support group. So a lot of the parents in our support group are parents who are walking a road with their teen who is an addict, whether it's a sexual addiction or a substance abuse problem. But our parent support group is not only open to those parents. It's any parents who are going, oh my goodness, in the words of my 15-year-old daughter, what the actual heck? I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to parent. And actually, it's so helpful. It is so good to get together with other parents and actually have that discussion. This is what I'm dealing with. This is where I'm at with my son or my daughter. What do I do? Give me some advice. Give me some strategies. And that's, you know, the parental support group that we have, and that anybody who's on this call could, you know, put their hand up and say, I'd like to be a part of that. But yeah, Kenneth, I think it's quite obvious to think about how, particularly those two extremes, the authoritarian parent and the completely disengaged, disinterested parents. Of course, those kids feel emotionally misunderstood, insignificant, unheard. Their longing for connection with other people will be massive. And those are your really vulnerable kids with regards to getting involved in addictive behavior and just getting involved with kids that are, you know, the kind of kids you would say, please don't hang out with. But yeah, I mean, it's a road, it's a journey, Kenneth, but to take away, there is help and there is support. Even though our kids are different, of course, everybody's child is different, but there are commonalities in how we can support our kid through difficult times. I don't know if that answers your question, Kenneth, but yeah, I think the conversation about it and speaking to other people is incredibly helpful. We also need to speak to people about where we are at emotionally, not just our teens. As parents, we also need to check in around emotionally how we're doing.
Yeah, I think lastly, to conclude, I think the point that I'm trying to make is that we can't change someone else directly. I mean, Maria and the ladies team will tell you, you know, in terms of boundaries, you can't change someone else directly. And often we think we'll fix someone else, but I can change someone else indirectly by working on myself. So I think the invitation is to work on myself. And if I change, then the relationship, the dynamic between the two individuals would change. And that's why we thought to bring in the parenting styles at the end, because that's going to make a difference. It's going to help us to connect with people and our kids better at the end of the day. We can't force them to not watch the stuff. If we try and do that, they may end up to be more rebellious. So every Wednesday at 10 o'clock, we've got our parent support group. No one here has to show up for that. We're just saying that there's a crisis. There's this issue. The AI sexual thing is busy happening, and potentially all of our kids are going to be exposed to this. I don't think there's any way that you'd be able to prevent this from happening. And I do believe that this is an extinction level event. Now, this sounds cataclysmic, or I don't know what would be a better word, like maybe fatalistic, like extinction level. Like if I was 15 years old and I had a pornography, now I am a sex addict and a porn addict. If I was 15 years old and I had the ability to have a conversation with an image on screen, I don't know if I'd ever have been married today. I really think this, now I feel actually emotional when I say this. I really think that this thing is so powerful that it can completely scatter humanity into complete isolation and darkness. This is serious stuff. This is serious stuff, and we have to have some sense of urgency to want to win back the hearts of our kids and be engaged with their hearts in a way that will not push them further and further into that level of darkness. We're gazing into the abyss today, the abyss, the darkness, but the darkness is also gazing back into our souls. It's searching our hearts for a space to enter in and to, never mind your relationship with God and Jesus. This thing is searching our souls to see where there's a weakness, a point of weakness, so that it can invade our hearts. This is absolutely happening as we speak. So everyone here is invited to connect with us. If you ever wanted to have conversations about parents, or about parenting, or about your teenagers or issues, we want to help. That's why we make these meetings available. We're just saying that there needs to be some sort of counter-revolution that stands up against this stuff, and at least there's one space where we can reach out and talk about this more. If anybody's got any questions, most welcome to reach out.